Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to share with you my August wrap-up. August was the busiest month for me, so I have moved, I finished my PhD, I'm now in a new town with a new job. It's all quite unbelievable, to be honest. But I also participated in the magical readathon, and I actually managed to read all of the 8 books that I had to read for the Archmage calling. So let's get through this. So the first book I had finished in August, I actually talked about at the end of my July wrap-up, and that was The Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. This is a mermaid story that reimagines mermaids as kind of these, saviors of the souls of people who drowned from slave ships. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on that, please check out my July vlog, my July wrap-up, because I talked about it there. Then the next book I actually finished was Bad Hair Day. This is one of the Goosebumps books by R.L. Stine, and I reread this as a childhood favorite for the Magical Readathon. These are very quick reads and I really enjoy them. I like to reread one like here and there where I can. And this one wasn't my favorite. I gave it 3 stars. And this one we follow a boy called Tim, and he wants to be a great magician. And then he gets the opportunity to go to a magic show in his town. And the magic show is done by the most famous American magician. And so Tim sneaks out with his little sister to see the show. But on his way back, he actually steals the materials, the bag of magic from this magician, and then bad things start happening. This one wasn't my favorite. I think it didn't really have the creep factor I wanted, and it's definitely one of the weaker ones. Then next I finished the 6th volume of Cheese Sweet Home. This is a little manga that is targeted towards children, but if you love cats, you can't go wrong with this. It's very sweet, very cute, and you're basically following this small cat called Chi. And at the beginning of this series, she loses her mother, but she's found by this very nice family. It's a father, mother, and their toddler, and so she grows up with them. Now, the problem is that they have an apartment where they're not allowed to have pets, and so for a while they try to hide Chi, but at the point we're in volume 6, they have actually moved house, so now Chi is able to live her freest life and actually go out and stuff like that, and so we follow her around town a little bit more. I also gave this one 3 stars. I felt like the first volumes were definitely stronger because there was just more to learn about how to take care of a cat and stuff like that. I feel like in these later volumes it's more about her like adventures and just running around town and getting lost, meeting other cats. So it's not that educational anymore, it's more fun and adventurous. Then the next book I finished for the Magical Readathon was Nothing But Black and Teas by Cassandra Khaw. And this book I read for the prompt that it had to be on people's worst books lists, and that I still thought I could enjoy this. And so this is a horror book where we follow a group of people who go to this Japanese mansion for a wedding. And there is this whole tale about a woman who wanted to get married there, a bride who was then left at the altar or something like that, and she died. And now her ghost haunts this estate. And so this book was interesting. It definitely had a great atmosphere, but I totally understand that people didn't like it because they said that it's so much more about the quarrels of this group of people and not so much about the horror elements. I still felt like the whole energy and the atmosphere of this mansion was done really, really well. And even though this kind of try to play with like tropes of horror stories, like the don't split up trope, I felt like it made sense for this like very dysfunctional group of people to split up and stuff like that. So I ended up enjoying this. I gave it 3 stars. It's also a story that's fading very fast from my mind. It's also very short. It's like only 130 pages. So this is one that I will definitely forget over time. But there's like certain elements that will kind of stay in the back of my mind. And so, yeah, 3 stars. I did enjoy it. I did not hate it as much as other people did. And then I finished my audiobook, which was The Poppy War by Orf Kwang. I'm doing separate reading vlogs for the whole series, but what I learned listening to this is that I don't enjoy fantasy that majorly focuses on war. I enjoy fantasy a lot more when it's more like an adventure story or it's like a lot of political intrigue and stuff like that. I don't enjoy like war. And so in this one we're following Rin. At the beginning of the novel, she has her only way out of a arranged marriage that she doesn't want is to go to this very prestigious military school, and she actually manages to get there, but there she's like the outsider. She's from the south, where people are believed to be like not educated at all. They have darker skin, and so yeah, it's very hard for her to fit into this military school. But the setting changes quite quickly in this book because she doesn't actually go to that school for that long. I think only 2 years or something. And then the actual war breaks out, and so she has to play a part in that. And I thought that the school aspect was kind of interesting. Like, I did really like her lessons with Jung, but yeah, it just never really clicked with me. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just not clicking with me. I love Rin. She is curious walking and I adore it. I love like female characters who don't give a damn about anything. So I love her. I think there is some really interesting dynamics between characters that I love reading about, but just something just doesn't click with me. So I decided to give it 4 stars. But I guess for my personal enjoyment, it would be more like a 3.5. But I can totally see that it is a me problem and not a book problem. Then going back to the magical readathon, I finished Bitter Orange by Claire Fuller. Now this is a literary fiction novel, and in this one we follow 3 people. We have Kara and Peter, who are a couple, and Francis, who is our main character. And basically they all live in this like abandoned estate in the British countryside, and before they went there, I think this is set in the late 60s, yeah, summer of 69. Before they went there, during the war, there were a lot of soldiers stationed in this place, so it has basically been wrecked, and they're there to kind of look around and see whether there's anything valuable left or whether this is just basically a lost cause. And so they spent the summer at this like really fancy estate that is super run down. And Frances is a very lonely woman. She is already, I think, 39 in this novel, and she has taken care of her sick mother for a very long time. So she never had like a real life of her own, and this is like the first time she's like really out there, I guess. So in that regard, it reminded me a little bit of The Haunting of Hill House, where the main character comes from a very similar situation. But this novel focuses a lot more on the entanglement of these 3 people. Frances gets invited into the world of Kara and Peter quite quickly when she arrives at this house, but she soon has to find out that not all the stories she's told about their past are true. And so, yeah, it's basically just about these characters. So we only have like 4 characters that are somewhat interesting or important in this novel, and we just watch what happens over the summer. I did enjoy this. I think that the writing was very interesting, but then at the ending there was just some things that irked me. We also get chapters or like parts of chapters where the main character Frances is an older woman and she's in a hospital or something like that because she's dying. And so yeah, we get these kind of like retrospective bits, and in those bits we find out that one character was in love with her, but I didn't feel it, like it didn't make sense to me at all. So that was just something I didn't like about it so much. So in the end I decided to give this 3.5 stars. It's definitely intriguing if you're like into these kind of books. Then the next book I finished was in the middle of my move, and it was the sequel to The Poppy War, The Dragon Republic. I've already said pretty much everything that I can say without spoiling anything, so I gave this book 4 stars as well. I had pretty much the same feelings about it as I did with The Poppy War. The thing with The Dragon Republic is that I read it like pretty fast, like I read the last chunk of it within a day or two because I was packing boxes, so that really helped immerse me more into the story. But yeah, I really loved the ending of that book. It was so good, but it's just still not clicking. Then the next book I read was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first novella in the Murderbot series, and I have been intrigued by this series for the longest time. But I'm just not a novella reader, so I hadn't picked it up before. But I decided the Magical Readathon was the perfect time. I needed short books, so I would get them done in the time frame. And I'm really glad I finally read this because it was so much fun. We're basically following an AI who has hacked the system, so now they're basically independent. They don't have to answer to the commands that they get anymore, but they're still doing their job because they just want the easy life and they enjoy watching like TV, basically, like trashy TV. So they downloaded all of these shows, and whenever they can, they're just doing their thing, watching stuff. But Murderbot is a security unit, so they are on this planet with a group of researchers, and they're there to protect the researchers, and then shit goes down. And I really enjoyed this. This was so much more action than I anticipated. For some reason I had thought that this would be more of a like insightful story, but it was a lot of action, a lot was going on. I really enjoyed my time with it. I thought the dynamics of the characters, the way that they dealt with each other, was so interesting as well. Now the thing that I didn't like about it was the ending, because it has this kind of like blackout ending, like there's a lot of action, there's a lot of important things going on, and then the main character basically blacks out and then everything is done. And I hate that. It's just a trope that I don't like. So I decided to give it 4 stars in the end. But I will definitely continue with the series because like the actual ending of the book was so good again. I really enjoyed that. Then, on the last day, I finished Sand by Wolfgang Herrndorff. Now this is a kind of thriller, spy novel, satire, whatever. I did not get this book. I do not get this book. I gave it 1.5 stars. I would not recommend it. And I couldn't really tell you what this is about. It's basically set in a non-existent town in Africa. And we have these super racist characters that are from France and from the United States. They're all running around there and they're basically all clueless and they try to do something. That's what this book is. So yeah, we basically have a main character that we meet at the beginning, and we learn that he is from France, but he had like an Arab grandfather or something like that. So when he is finished with his education in France, he goes back to Africa, wherever. It's not even clarified where the hell that is. And he works there as like a police detective guy, something. And then he loses all his memories. We never know why or how. The book always tells us that it is completely impossible that he has lost his memories, but he has. And we know exactly who he is, but he doesn't. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. Okay, let's just ignore that book. If you want super racist characters and plot that makes no sense, the most confusing writing you've ever read, then you could try this book. Okay, and the last book I want to talk about today is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This is the Patreon book club pick from Riley Marie's channel, and usually she's doing like romance reads, but I do not read romance, so I was really happy to see that there's actually a book that I'm interested in reading there. So I decided to read it, and I'm very glad that I did, because if it wasn't for this book club, I probably wouldn't have picked it up, but I loved it. This was my favorite read of the month, which I absolutely did not see coming, because all the people on the Discord were not impressed by this book at all. But for some weird reason, it worked for me. And I can totally see why it doesn't work for people. Like when I read the comments, I was like, yeah, okay, I can see that maybe you don't like that, but I do. I'm sorry. So basically in this book we are following a woman who's going back to her home, like the place she grew up, because her mother is dying. And we learn pretty early on that her father has done horrible things. He's basically a serial killer, and the mother has kept the daughter in the house until she finished her education, and then she basically said, okay, now you go and you never return. So it's like really weird that now that she's dying, the mother invited the daughter back. And she's like, hey, you need to come back here, you need to take care of the house. And so the main character is going back there, and she basically thinks, okay, I'm just gonna clear out all the cupboards and make this house ready to sell on. But there's a lot more going on than that. Basically, the mother has turned the house into kind of a museum, and she always had like writers and artists live there so they can get inspired by the horrible things that the father did in this house. And so there is a guy living on the property right now as well, and he's the son of one author who basically took advantage of the family right after everything had happened, and he wrote a very famous book where he propped this father up to be one of the big serial killers of the US. And so, there's a lot of like intrigue and true crime nerds who, whatever, you know how it goes. What I liked about this book is that it definitely gave me some "We Have Always Lived in the Castle" vibes, because we have these two female characters, the mother and the daughter, who are in the house, but then we also have this like outside guy who kind of is like sneaking his way in, and it definitely gave me some similar vibes. Obviously it's very different. For one, Just Like Home is a bit longer, and then it's definitely even more horror, but the way it just turned the haunted house trope on its head, I absolutely loved it. I saw some people say that they felt it was a cop-out, and I totally understand, but for me it wasn't. For me, this is where the story needed to go. This could have been done a little bit differently, I guess, but I really enjoyed it. And I said in my vlog that I think that the way this like home is presented from the perspective of someone who's obviously from a very broken family just made sense to me. Like if you would ask me about my home where I grew up, I would probably say like, yeah, that's kind of makes sense. So I really did enjoy that, and I really did click with the ending, and I absolutely loved it. But this book is definitely not for everyone. I gave this book a 4.5 stars, mainly because I thought the beginning was a bit slow, and I think we should have gotten a couple of the reveals a little bit earlier so it wouldn't feel so slow at the beginning. So that was my reading in August. Definitely let me know what your favorite read of August was. I would love to hear about that in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!